I am Vicki O'Doherty. I'm Vicki O'Doherty, the worship associate for this morning. Many thanks to our technical team, Jenny O'Giddy and Kathy Atwell, for this morning's service. We're doing a low-tech operation here, by the way, folks, okay? We just have the one iPhone and that's it. We're excited to have attendees both in person, in the sanctuary, as well as virtually on Zoom. If you are new to the congregation, you can stand and introduce yourself if you're willing, if you want to. Anybody new? No, okay, that's fine. Here we go. Thank you very much. All right. Big welcome to everyone. Unitarian Universalism is a liberal religious faith that carries no creed and welcomes all seekers, whoever you are, whomever you love, and wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. We are guided by a set of principles and written sources that encompass the many ways we come to know and understand the world, the universe, and the divine. Our principles are important to us at UU Catskills, and we live our values on a daily basis. We affirm that Black lives matter. We are a welcoming congregation for the LGBTQ community. We are a congregational affiliate of the Ulster Immigrant Defense Network, and we are an active voice in the effort to address climate change. Our sanctuary here is built on the tribal land of the Lenni Lenape people. Community circles connect members with others that live in their community. There are 9 circles in the different areas who meet monthly in person or online through Zoom. If you would like to, you can get in touch with the circle in your area by contacting the office administrator. Just leave a message at the office. I think we're between administrators now. If you'd like to contact someone at UU Catskills, for those attending online, a contact list is shown on your screen. Yeah, there we go. You can visit our website, uucatskills.org, to find contact information. And also you'll be able to be added to our mailing list and to find the latest newsletter. That's via the uucatskills.org website. If you're a visitor online and would like to be added to our mailing list, you can put your name and email address in the chat box area on Zoom. We encourage you to read our October newsletter that members and others on our distribution list receive by email. It is also found on our website. There you'll find newsworthy items on the happenings in our UU community and also upcoming events for the month. Weekly updates are also sent by email, and there you will find events for the coming week. And details are in our newsletter. Thanks to everyone who's assisting today in our service. After the service, for those of you attending via Zoom, please stay for our breakout rooms, which are our virtual coffee break. For our prelude this morning, we have Liz Thomas, who will perform "The Children Will Listen" by Stephen Sondheim.
Children will listen. Careful you do it too. Children will sing and learn. Guide them but step away. Children will listen. Tamper with what is true, and children will turn if just to be free. Careful before you say, listen to me. Children will listen. Children will listen. Children will listen.
Thank you, Liz, for sharing your gift of music with us. Our opening words today are by Mark Nason. When public schools are judged by how much art and music they have, by how many science experiments their students perform, by how much time they have for recess and play, and by how much food they grow, rather than how many tests they administer, then I will be confident that we are preparing our students for a future where they will be creative participants and makers of history rather than obedient drones for the ruling economic elite. It's Mark Nason via Purple Buddha Project. All right, please join me for the unison affirmation, which is in the order of service. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love to all living beings. May we know once again that we are not isolated, but connected in wonder and joy to mystery and miracle in the universe, in this community, and in each other. Now, please join me in reading the chalice lighting words. Light this chalice in grateful, loving community, even in the darkest of times. May its flames light paths to courage, justice, and hope. Following words of climate change wisdom are by Kathy Hapel. The problem of the climate risks is a failure of language. The right word would be as long as the lives of my grandchildren and their grandchildren. Now we have a story for all ages.
Trying
by Kobe Yamada.
How do you do that?
How do you do that?
I didn't realize I'd said it out loud.
I didn't realize I'd said it out loud. The sculptor looked over and replied, "You simply do it."
I could never do that.
Oh no, I could never
How do you
do
know?
that.
He asked.
How do you
I
know?
just
He
know.
asked. I just know.
Confused, I walked away. He must be joking.
He must be joking.
But as I left, I couldn't help
wondering what it would be like to
so
create
incredible.
something so incredible.
When I returned, the
sculptor looked over at me and asked, "How is your sculpture coming
I'm
along?"
just here to watch.
"I'm just here to watch."
The best way to give your talents
an opportunity is to try, he responded. Rather just watch. I can't mess things up if I just watch.
Yes. If you do nothing, it's safe. But everything stays the same. If you do nothing, there's less to experience. Less love. And thus to learn. The fear of failing is scary to start, and it stops most people get started.
People from
The only way to get where you want to go
to where you want to go is
in
to
that
take a
direction.
step in that direction.
And the best way
And
to do
the
that
best way
is to
to do
begin.
that is to begin.
It was all I could think about. Even as I slept,
I dreamt of creating beautiful
I
things.
was excited to get
I
started.
was excited to get started. But as I was working, I realized that something was
With every
wrong.
strike, I felt a little more defeated. With every blow,
With
my disappointment grew. This was not turning out the way I had imagined. Why did I think I could do it? Why had I let myself care
every
so
blow,
much?
my disappointment
The
grew.
next time I saw the sculptor,
This
he
was
asked
not
about my
turning
work,
out the
and
way
I
I
told
had
him it was no
imagined.
good and that I had quit.
Why did I think I could do it?
Why would you
Why had I
do
let
that?
myself care so much?
Because it feels awful to want something
The next
so
time I saw
badly
the
and then
sculptor, he
just
asked
be
about my work,
disappointed.
and I told him it was no good and
Yes,
that I had
the
quit.
sculptor replied,
Why would you
disappointment
do that?
hurts,
He asked.
but
Because it feels awful
it's
to want
temporary
something so
and in
badly
many
and then
ways
just be
necessary.
disappointed.
It shows us how
Yes,
something
the
can't be
sculptor
done,
replied.
which
Disappointment
means we're a
hurts,
little closer to
but
finding out
failure,
how we
it's
can.
temporary and
When
in
you
many
first tried
ways
to walk, you fell,
necessary.
but you picked
It shows
yourself
us
up
how
and tried
something
again.
can't be
You
done,
were willing to
which means
fail
we're a little
over and
closer to
over
finding
and
out
over,
how it
and
can.
that is why you
When you
succeeded.
first tried to walk,
How
you
do I know
fell,
this?
but you picked
You
yourself
are
up and
standing
tried
in front of
again.
me now. I had tried, and I had failed. Now he was asking me to try again. What good would that do if I had already?
You were willing to fail over and over and over, and that is why you succeeded. How do I know this? You are standing in front of me now. I had tried, and I had failed. Now he was asking me to try again. What good would that do if I had already proven I couldn't do it? But if I was honest, I wanted to believe I could. So, even though I worried that I wasn't good enough, I decided to try again. I worked and worked, and then I worked some more. And while I could see it was a little better, it still wasn't at all what I had wanted it to be. I stormed up to the sculptor. See? I told you I wasn't any good, and this proves it. Are you happy now? Yes, he replied. I'm happy. It's good to see you sculpting. But it's terrible. I don't even know what I'm making anymore. You're making progress, he explained. I see talent emerging. I see risks being taken. I see courage. I see caring. I see perseverance. Yes, I see much progress indeed, and I hope you will keep trying. I tried again, and again, and again. As I stepped back and looked at my work, I had to admit, I wished I was better. I went to talk to the sculptor, and he asked me to go for a walk with him. He said, I know it can be hard when things don't turn out as you hoped, but be proud of your failures. I know I am. Every one of them. I can't imagine you ever failing. He laughed. More times than I can count, but each time you fail, you get a little smarter and a little braver and a little stronger. The truth is, we are all failures. The dreamers, the doers, the creators. Being a failure means you loved something. You cared. It means you stepped forward. You didn't hold back. You tried. That's why I brought you here. He gestured to the statues around him. These are my friends. These are my failures. And I'm grateful for every one of them because they helped me become who I am today. I will tell you a secret, the sculptor confided. I am now much closer to the end.
Here we go. Okay, now you're unmuted. Okay. All right.
This is by Cahill Gibran. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life goes not backwards, nor tarries with yesterday. We will now have a few moments for some introspection and quiet thoughts, and we invite you to find a comfortable place to sit and deep breathe. Can you move the slide along? We're all meditated out, right, folks? All right. Our offering and offertory today. For that, half of our Sunday collection will be donated to a local charity. This month's charity is Harambe. Harambe is a Mid-Hudson Valley coalition that supports and promotes the strength of our community through cultural and educational events that enriches the lives of youth and adults. We'll be passing the basket around the sanctuary today, but at home, you can donate using the donate page on our website with PayPal or by mailing your check through the United States Postal Service. And you'll see a QR code in today's order of service for PayPal if you want to do that here. Our offertory music today is Be the Light, which is inspired by Amanda Gorman's poem, The Hill We Climb. And it's put to music by Leah Morris, and it's performed with Leah Morris and a virtual choir.
Hey, you guys, Leah here. So I must be among millions of people who tuned in to the inauguration yesterday on January 20th, 2021. And I was inspired by every moment of it, but especially rapt, lifted, exalted, just completely fixated and moved by Amanda Gorman's poem, Present, her beauty, her artistry. And so this song was born. There is always a light. We are ready to see it. There is always a light. And we are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill. Together we will. There is always a light in the dark. We are ready to see it. There is always a light in the dark. We are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night and be a gift. Together we will. There is always a light. There is always a light. We are ready to see it. There is always a light. There is always in the dark. We are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night and be a gift. Together we will. There is always light. There is always dark. There is always light. There is always dark. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night and be a climb this hill. Together we will. There is always light. There is always dark. There is always light. There is always dark. Be the light.
Okay. Okay. I don't know. Okay, good. Here we are. We're back. Okay. So we do something called joys and sorrows, or it's joys and concerns, either one. which is that we as a community bring our joys and concerns here, and we put a stone in the water. I will put a stone in the water for you if you have a joy or concern that you wish to share. Anybody?
This is a special reading before I begin my readings. What Do Teachers Make by Taylor Molly. The dinner guests were sitting around the table discussing life. One man, a CEO, decided to explain the problem with education. He argued, what's a kid gonna learn from someone who decided the best option in life was to become a teacher? He reminded the other dinner guests what they say about teachers. Those who can, do. Those who can't, teach. To stress his point, he said to another guest, you're a teacher. What do you make? Having a reputation for honesty and frankness, I replied, you want to know what I make? I make kids work harder than they ever thought they could. I make a C+ feel like the winner of the Congressional Medal of Honor. I make kids sit through 40 minutes of study hall in absolute silence. You want to know what I make? I make kids wonder. I make them ask questions. I make them criticize. And I make them apologize and mean it. I make them write. I make them read. I make them show all their work in math and perfect the final draft in English. I make them understand if you have brains and follow your heart, and if someone ever tries to judge you by what you make, you must pay them no mind, no attention, because they just didn't learn. I paused and continued. You want to know what I make? I make a difference. What do you make? Good morning, everyone. This morning, Jeff and I would like to share some of our thoughts on the education of children in our country, based on our personal experiences as teachers and camp counselors during our years from the 1960s through 2004. These thoughts are based mostly on our work with children in public schools, 3 summers in Camp Madison Felicia, and 1 year in a rural setting in a private school in Silo, North Carolina, for junior high age children. Jeff and I first met in 1966 as counselors at Camp Madison Felicia in the Putnam Valley, sponsored by the New York Ethical Culture Society. Together with Jeff's friend and former college roommate, Larry Bresner, Larry and I, both 6th grade teachers at the same public school up here in the Bronx, headed up the counselor and training unit, and Jeff was the nature counselor. Our campers were from poor neighborhoods in the city and were from several neighborhood centers like the Henry Street Settlement House and the Hudson Guild Settlement. They came for 3 weeks, and everything we did was structured to give them an experience we hoped they would carry with them forever. One of the campers that first summer was a 10-year-old Black girl named Karen Elaine Johnson, who sat with her bunk in the darkened barn as our teens performed South Pacific. Karen sat in the darkness, but a light was turned on in her body. She would grow up having seen the possible. She would change her name. She would go on to entertain with Robin Williams and Billy Crystal, doing comic relief for the homeless, and make movies and be part of a very popular TV show and write several books. She has also spoken about Camp Madison Felicia's experience and has attended camp reunions. One of her takeaways from camp is that it was a great leveler for children, as though children not knowing who had money and who doesn't have money, as everyone is running around in t-shirts and shorts. I would like to think something happened besides that to Karen in that darkened barn. For the first time, she saw a young girl who had dark skin like hers sing and act the lead role in a show that had been done on Broadway and was also a movie. It was the Mary Martin role. We jokingly kid that we are responsible for Whoopi Goldberg. As teachers, we want all our children to believe that the future is waiting for them. Part of that imagery can come about when we have teachers who engineer success and incorporate meaningful activities within the lessons. We loved our camp experiences that first summer, but even better was falling in love with each other. And so we got married a few months later, just after Thanksgiving in 1966. Jeff and I continued to teach from that September through June of 1969, and we returned to Camp Madison Felicia the summers of 67 and 68. In the fall and winter of 68, we faced, if you all remember, if any of you were in Manhattan, a teacher strike, a garbage strike, and a winter blizzard. On New Year's Day, 1969, my former theater professor at the University of Miami called to wish us a Happy New Year, and along with his wife, Emmy, invited us to come and stay in their Miami home for the next year while they went on sabbatical in Europe. It took us maybe 20 minutes of heavy debate before accepting their proposition. We arrived in Miami on July 20th, 1969, and never looked back. No one ever looked at us to welcome us either, since on that day, we were landing on the moon and everybody was glued to their screen. Before Dr. and Mrs. Fillauer left for Europe, they suggested, knowing us well and our ethical culture membership and our politics, that we visit their Unitarian church. They thought it would be a good fit. Well, we went, and it was, and we remained for the next 49 years. The word Universalist would soon be added to Unitarian, and then the 70s church was replaced by society and then by congregation as it remains today. Many of you might remember a popular bumper sticker that UU's had at the time in the 70s and 80s. To question is the answer. Our adopted religion fit neatly into our religious DNA as well as our teaching styles. From 1970 to 74, I was in the mothering business, and Jeff received a scholarship to earn a master's degree in a relatively new field called learning disabilities, which would prove to be prophetic, as he has spent the rest of his life figuring out the most meaningful and creative ways to help beginning struggling readers learn to read. From 1973 to 74, we had an opportunity to be in Silo, North Carolina, where Jeff was the director and I was the English teacher of the Arthur Morgan School, a fascinating residential school for junior high age children based on Quaker ideals. The students were involved not only in academics, but growing their own food, mountain climbing, and decision-making in running the school. The book, written a few years before we came on board by Burton W. Gorman, described the Arthur Morgan School, as it was called, education for learning to live together. We returned to Miami in 1974, where Jeff continued teaching as a specialized teacher, and I returned to, in 1980, after our 3 daughters were all in school. Throughout all of my teaching, I encouraged my students to make connections. If a student could find everlasting ties to what they were learning, ideas would stick. For example, when we were learning about the 1600s, early 1700s in the colonial period in North America, I introduced them to Sir Isaac Newton, and we began work on prisms and light. Additionally, we listened to some music by George Frederick Handel, especially since his last years were spent in England and both men probably knew each other, or at least were aware of each other. There is a wonderful book called A History of the World in 6 Glasses by Tom Standage that supports the ideas that coffee houses became almost as potent as our internet is today. In the 1600s to 1700s in England and beyond, the coffee houses were like modern websites, vibrant and typically specialized in a particular topic or point of view. There was a coffee house at Oxford, for example, where Christopher Wren, the scientist Hooke, the astronomer John Flamsteed, Pepys and Edmund Halley gathered. Cambridge's coffee house was the site for Halley and Newton's heated discussions on gravity, which would lay the groundwork for Newton's Principia. As a science history teacher with a non-traditional background, I found a way to share my love of what I was teaching, while at the same time using my love and experience in theater to open new paths to explain and have my students make connections. The nature of science and history, for that matter, had been a way for human beings to explain their natural environment. One of my secret joys as a teacher was to share several first people stories that explained their culture, how their world came to be. Mrs. Reiter, a student was hand raised, would say, "That sounds like Adam and Eve's story in the Bible." I would smile and say, "Anyone else see that?" It was not by accident that the early Roman Church, their church fathers, made sure that the birth of Jesus was placed at a point and a time of year when a Roman holiday was already in place. No, nor has it escaped my notice that the giant bird Oestra with her large egg was supplanted by Easter, the earth's own resurrection coinciding with that of Jesus. For years, I have been fascinated by the comparative similarities of religions around the world. And what is religion, except our desire to explain what cannot be explained easily? Most cultures share a flood story. Western Judeo-Christianity gives their hero a name, Noah. Other cultures, like the Northwest Coast First People of North America, have a flood story also, where their people are saved by raven. As a teacher, I am put off by the term critical race theory that has been bandied about as though the historical truth of Africans arriving at our shores in 1619 is a theory, when in actuality it is a documented fact. It is as false as the often shared mythology that it was only the South that had slavery and are guilty of this wart on our shared history. The actual historical truth was and is that without the New England ships' captains, crews, and ships, the slave trade triangle could not have happened as easily as it did. It is so well known that the Broadway show 1776, which opened in March 1969, had a show-stopping solo which sings its guilt, molasses to rum to slaves. Adhering to my constructivist teaching model to give students as many hooks as possible to help them remember the truth as we explored our country's founding and the roots of this social evil, I played this and showed them the scenes from the subsequent film. Listening to this aria and learning about our responsibility for slavery does not make our children feel guilty. It makes them aware. The North was very involved in the reality of slavery. No amount of denial will change that reality. Teaching the truth about our history does not make us feel guilty or our children, as they were not the perpetrators. What it does, though, is share the horror, the unequalness, the wrongness of an institution that helped to build our country in an unjust and illegal way. At this very moment, up here in the North, Harvard University is starting to deal with this reality of historically supporting slavery. Teaching and learning our history is another opportunity to explain why injustice and poverty among a large group of fellow Americans still exists, and why their struggle is our struggle. It is why we must bring equity and equality where none was given or existed until the late 1960s, and then only in small pieces. The North was very involved in the reality of slavery. In his book, The Grandees by Stephen Birmingham, he clearly describes the how, the who, and the where. This area that we live in was a very active participant. In the Hudson Valley Magazine July 2022 issue, there is an excellent essay, July 1827, which confirms New York slave involvements in until July 4th, 1827, New York's final emancipation. New York was the first state to abolish slavery. Nevertheless, the 1830 census still counted 75 slaves in New York. Although freed, the former slaves remained disenfranchised by the New York Constitutional Convention of 1821, which gave the vote only to free Black men who owned substantial property. This was the law until the passage of the 15th Amendment in 1870. Many people don't know that in the 1850s, New York City was a hub of illegal international slave trading. According to documentation from the New York Public Library, New York benefited much from slavery and the slave trades, Southern cotton, sugar, which sailed to Europe from the harbor. Banks, insurance companies, among them Aetna, JP Morgan Chase, and New York Life, and lawyers made a brisk business with slaveholders and slave ship owners. Slavery, of course, has ended, but race equality remains as yet an unattained dream for many. Our children and we must understand and learn our true past in order to change our present and future. Hiding our history or pretending it was different will only delay the promise of what we believe we stand for. We need to remember that school is a building with tomorrow inside. I believe my students were all at risk, but I taught them as though they were gifted. We are at an educational crossroads, I believe, in our country. The model for teaching in our country is being challenged as belonging to a different time and for a very different population. We are a very much more heterogeneous student group than we were only 100 years ago. Our students come out of homes that haven't looked like Dick and Jane for many years. With the addition of computers in our classes and continually testing and measuring our students, especially within the last 2 COVID years, we've experienced severe isolation and depression. The traditional model of the educational vehicle is a rigid experience with students sitting in rows, little group work or discussion time by students. It is a model that prides itself on covering a great deal, but not in depth. The constructivist model is another model that is used in many countries around the world: Finland, Denmark, Japan, Sweden, Australia, to name just a few, which I learned about while getting my master's in science education in 1998. It covers less material each year, but in greater depth. Students work together in small groups, and they sit in groups rather than in rigid rows, and discussion is encouraged. We do not get more and better milk by weighing our cow every week. The constructivist model is a more humanistic model of education for all of us. It is very hands-on and allows for individual differences. As an example, I had a few students in several classes that I taught who absolutely could not sit still long enough to be able to read a page in one of our books. At the beginning of each year, I explained how my idea would work. I asked if there were anyone who needed to walk around to read, just to let me know. And I usually had 2 or 3 walker readers a year. It really helped them relieve the tension while silent reading. Others asked if they could sit near a friend they felt close to. Now, I know some of you will say, oh, I bet they really talked a lot, huh? Well, actually, no, they didn't, because in the constructivist model, there is a great deal of talking already. My classes all had grouping. Within these groups of usually 4 students, there were jobs. Someone would be the recorder, another the encourager, a third the reporter, and the fourth the questioner. There was an important job for each, with the encourager making sure that everyone in the group got to speak, and the reporter reporting back to the class on what they discovered, questioned, debated, or learned. When my students wrote, there was generally a quiet, industrious stillness in the room. I could smell the word work sweat and hear the paper to pen introductions. Occasionally, a wanderer had to get up and move from the room under the pretext of needing to find a magical word in a dictionary. But I knew she was just another walker writer, a pacer who must internalize her thoughts to the rhythm of her movements before it reaches her fingertips and the paper. There were others who absolutely needed to have a midwife in their word birthing, and their heads seemed always conjoined. The tableaus were all as different as their work. I began teaching a special curriculum in 1993, which identified 16 at-risk students. My room was divided in half. One half of the room contained student desks for traditional academic work. The other side of the room was set up with several vocational stations, such as typesetting, science, microscope work, dental hygienist, architecture, photography, nursing, manicurist, book editing, and it goes on. The students loved that side of the room, to read about the different jobs and then to perform the work at that station. And to get to the other side of the room, the students had to complete all their academic work that morning. Needless to say, the Comet Lab, as it was known, was a huge success. And my students quickly achieved success in several areas that had placed them at risk. Attendance and academic achievement had eluded them for years. Now the class racked up perfect attendance as well as good grades. The class was so successful that the following year, my at-risk class grew to 18 students. The next year, 20. The next year after that, 24. And finally, 27 students. In my last year of the Comet Lab, I was told by the district that because of its success, the Comet Lab in Region 5 was being removed, and I kid you not, this was the quote, because there were no more at-risk students. Those were the exact words told to me for my room being stripped over the summer without even a heads up. I returned to a regular 5th grade class for the next 7 years until my retirement in 2004. Stop believing the lies. Quit demonizing teachers and let teachers do their jobs. For the group of people who probably haven't set foot in an elementary school in decades, let me clarify some of the missing information being shared about what goes on in these classrooms. Kindergartners are not learning about sexual intercourse. Second graders and fifth graders aren't being pitted against each other in some sort of guilt-inducing race war. That is all utter nonsense peddled by some people with agendas trying to get our vote or raise their ratings. Rather than rage against the vile and outrageous hogwash that is being served up, I encourage all of us to volunteer an hour of our week to read to a struggling child. Or if you have a business, partner at a school and support or help them with a project they want to get off the ground, like planting a garden. Teachers and schools are not filled with evil lefty liberals indoctrinating the neighborhood children with some leftist agenda. Teachers are simply educated adults who have chosen as their life's work to spend every day working with kids to help them better comprehend what they read, explore the world around them, ask questions so they can more fully understand what they see and live effectively in a community. Teachers tie shoelaces, give hugs to sad 7-year-olds, talk through conflict between fourth graders, provide wet paper towels to soothe boo-boos on kindergartners who swear it exists when you can't even see it. We laugh with our kids, eat lunch with them, and give them feelings of comfort and stability. Many are missing at their home for many, many different reasons. Sometimes we might even provide the first smile of any or a word of any kind they receive that day. In conclusion, I believe we must change our delivery and educational model to reach today's students. Teachers must make themselves more familiar with the evidence of our historical truth. We should do less testing and more engineering of success to encourage our children and let them better understand our present. They are all at risk, but we should teach them as though they are gifted. Hiding our history or pretending it was different will only delay the promise of what we believe we stand for. Teaching truth to power is uncomfortable for some, but if we are to live up to what we pledge and sing, we must all share and be taught. Today, Jeff will share a song about the American school system and how they are misinforming our children with an optimistic outlook on our history that's just not true. The song quickly became an icon among protesters of the Vietnam War in many countries, and I think it's about to become popular again. The song was written by Tom Paxton.
Such a tension. This song was written by Tom Paxton, but it was recorded first actually by Pete Seeger, 1964. What did you learn in school today, dear little boy of mine? What did you learn in school today, dear little boy of mine? I learned that Washington never told a lie. I learned that soldiers seldom die. I learned that everybody's free, and that's what the teacher said to me. That's what I learned in school today. That's what I learned in school. did you learn in school today, dear little boy of mine? What did you learn in school today, dear little boy of mine? I learned that policemen are my friends, learned that justice never ends, learned that murderers die for their crimes, even if we make a mistake sometimes. That's what I learned in school today, that's what I learned in school. What did you learn in school today, dear little boy of mine? What did you learn in school today, dear little boy of mine? I learned that war is not so bad. I learned about the great ones we have had. We fought in Germany and in France, and someday I might get my chance. That's what I learned in school today, that's what I learned in school. What did you learn in school today, dear little boy of mine? What did you learn in school today, dear little boy of mine? I learned our government must be strong. It's always right and never wrong. Our leaders are the finest men. We elect them again and again. That's what I learned in school today. That's what I learned in school.
As a teacher, we want our children to believe that the future is waiting for them. If a child can't learn the way we teach, maybe we should teach the way they learn. In the words of Margaret Mead, children must be taught how to think, not what to think.
Our closing words, our closing for the service, extinguish the chalice that's on your screen. Please join me in the words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. Thank you. Go in peace. And you can join us for a little socializing afterwards. For those of you on Zoom, please join us in your breakout rooms, which will start soon. Sad things.